recent cover of Reconsider Baby. Today we're going to be looking at the lead vocal part. If you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to look at some of the previous blog posts and videos I've made so you can understand how we got to this point and some of the offline processing we've done, the microphones we've used, and all of that. You may find that very helpful. With that, I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. First, I'm going to go ahead and let you hear the vocal by itself with nothing else on it. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So it's a very dry vocal. There's nothing really special or crazy about it. The sound is actually coming from two microphones, a ribbon microphone and a tube microphone running at approximately equal gain, blended together. You can hear the two separately if you'd like. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. And we'll do the same thing with the tube mic. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. Don't want to get into a huge discussion on the recording, but by using the ribbon mic and the tube mic together, I was able to effectively EQ the sound to some extent before I ever get into the mix. You'll hear there's a clear difference in sound. The ribbon is warm and round, and you could even say a little dull. The tube mic is a little thinner in that case and brighter. So if we look at the ribbon mic, I have no processing on this channel, but what I am doing is, we talked about this in an earlier video, I'm sending a little bit of this signal to the bus that the rhythm section is going to. So this is creating bleed. That's the only processing happening on this at all. If we move to the tube mic, we are doing a little bit of de-essing. I'm using the Waves de-esser. It's very simple. Pull up a preset for mel S, and then I just adjust the frequencies up and down a little bit as necessary. Very simple and easy to use. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So you can see it not only picked up the S on miss you, but it picked up the hard consonant sound. Actually, it's I, it wasn't a consonant, and gave a tiny bit of reduction on that. I have the de-essing pretty minimal on this. By using a ribbon mic and the tube mic together, I was actually able to capture minimal sibilance to begin with. At the worst spot in the song, there's probably about 3.5 dB of gain reduction on those frequencies. Now that I have the two signals blended together, they're running into this channel. The first thing I'm doing with them is I'm using the Waves CLA 76 Blue Stripe version of the 1176 compressor limiter. My purpose on this is not to do anything dramatic. I actually did do a little bit of gentle compression on the way in during recording. I'm just trying to catch a few of the higher peaks and round them off just a little bit. So I'm using an attack time that is medium slow for an 1176 and a quick release, so it'll just barely catch. So here's without. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. And here's with. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So you can see there's minimal gain reduction in this section. There's a slight volume boost as well. I'm going to come to a section where there's a little bit more dynamic vocal. Oh, I'm going to let you go head on out now, baby. Pray that you'll come back home someday. So even in that very dynamic section, you hear very, very little compression going on. So again, this is really just gently smoothing out the peaks. I'm using it for character as well. The 1176 has a little bit of a sound to it. I picked the blue stripe over the black stripe because this one just seemed to perform a little bit better on my voice. I think I found that the blue stripe has a little more, I guess, mojo in the mids whereas the black face appears to me have a little bit more mojo going on in the lower end. So the bulk of the compression is happening with an LA2A copy, the Waves Classic Compressors Edition, and I'll let you hear that. Oh, I'm gonna let you go head on out now, baby. Pray that you'll come back home someday. So you can see we're getting 5 to 6 dB of gain reduction in an aggressive part of the song. I'll solo this on and off. Oh, I'm gonna let you go head on out now, baby. Pray that you'll come back home someday. Now, it may be hard to hear in the video because I do have the volume matched up pretty well, but what this compressor is really doing is it's giving body, whereas the 1176 is really just kind of controlling some of the harder sounds and gently reining them in. This is actually creating a little bit fuller sound, a vocal that has a little bit more body to it through the compression. And if I go through a lighter section, you might be able to hear that a little bit better. Let me try this. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. That's with it. Here's without. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. When I kick it in there at the end, again, it's not a perfect volume match. There's a little bit of a volume boost, but you can hear there's a little more body to the voice, and that's what I'm using the compression for. The next processing on the vocal is some EQ. This is very minimal. Again, I wanted to try to keep this as authentic and live as possible, and I used 2 mics to kind of pre-EQ my voice. But you'll see I'm rolling off frequencies at the very high end. I'm rolling off frequencies at the very low end. I'm making a slight boost in the low to low mids, as you'll see in here. And that, again, is just about adding a little bit of warmth and body to my voice. I come across a little thin sometimes, and this gives me a little bit more the sound of when I'm right up on the mic, as opposed to when I'm doing more of a live setting and I'm back from the mic a little bit farther. And then I've got just a very small amount of bite dialed in right here at just about 2K. So there's not much else going on. You can hear this. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So it's pretty subtle. Jumping from there, I want to point out as we get into the effects that I have a separate vocal send on the tube mic. So I'm sending the overall blended signal with the compression and everything else to a reverb. I'm also sending some additional unprocessed signal from the tube microphone only also to that same reverb. The reason I'm doing that is the tube mic has a brighter sound, and I wanted to use a little bit of a brighter sound in the reverb. And so by sending a little bit more of the tube mic than the other mic, I naturally get that, as well as the dynamics, the original dynamics and performance are all preserved in this, and that goes into the reverb. Little things like that can add up and create some character. So let's talk about the reverb. I'm using a Lexicon vocal plate. This is their vintage plate. You can see right now this is a test build. I'm actually doing beta testing for Lexicon on their newest release. It's coming up. And we'll go ahead and let you hear the plate. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So it's fairly subtle. One thing I have with the reverb is I've got this on the back side. I've got a Pultec EQ. This adds just a slight amount of warmth. I'm also using it to shape the EQ just a little bit more. One thing to keep in mind is even though we're just showing you the vocals right now, there are some other instruments that I do send into the vocal reverb. It's very common for me to send a little bit of the snare into the vocal reverb, and it's very common for me to send a little bit of the lead guitar into the vocal reverb as well. So keep that in mind, but I'm adding a little bit of low end warmth, a little bit of extra boost around 4 kilohertz, kind of in the vocal and lead guitar kind of range, and I'm rolling off a little bit of the highest frequencies. The other part of the vocal effect is a delay, and I'll let you go ahead and hear that as well. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that up so you can hear it a little bit better. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So it's kind of washed out. It's in the background. It's very thin. I'm using the Waves Super Tap Delay. It's the just the classic. It's been around forever, and it's really powerful. I've got the beats, the echoes in sync with the beat, and I've got a little bit of shaping of the frequencies over here on the response. I'm also following that up with an EQ, and in that EQ I'm rolling off some of the lowest frequencies. Again, keep in mind that these effects may be feeding some things beyond just the vocal. I think in this case it is just the vocal, but that helps thin it out a little bit. Plus the Neve, I shouldn't say they're technically Neve, the VEQ3 from Waves, which is based on a Neve, has a little bit of color to it that I like to add to my mixes. So the last piece of tying the vocal in with everything else is feeding a little bit of that into the same reverb that all the instruments are going into, which is again a lexicon. It's just a chamber, an EM7 medium chamber. And again on that, I'm also following that up with an EQ. That EQ has a little bit of bite added at 4.7, and then the low end you'll see is really tapered off. I've got a 150 down is cut out. I've got from 330 down filtered out 2 dB, and then I've got a little bit of boost here. Again, keep in mind I'm feeding a lot of instruments in there. This is to keep the bass buildup from getting out of hand. So rather than send the vocal directly into that reverb, what I'm doing is I'm actually just sending the signal from the delay into that reverb. So it just adds a little hint of it. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. So it's pretty subtle, but here's what it sounds like all together. And the way that I will miss you, well, I guess you'll never know. We've been together so long to have to separate this way. You'll notice I have quite a bit of volume automation. I pull the mics down a little bit between phrases to clean up breath noise. And also, like in this case, you can see this is a strong build going into the solo. I'll let you hear that. And rather than relying strictly on the dynamics processors, I use some volume automation to help control that and make it nice and smooth. Beyond that, the mix runs through the master bus, and on the master bus I've got a little bit of light compression and EQ and some tape saturation, and then a limiter that it runs into just to bring the overall volume up a little bit. So that's it. That is my mix for Reconsider Baby. I hope you found that helpful, and I look forward to sharing some future projects with you.